السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. Last time we spoke about youth nature as it relates to self and authorities. Today we are going to break down this a little bit more and how it influences the youth choices and life. Does anyone remember we went over this before? We did. Yeah. Yusuf also told me that we did this one. And tonight we are going to do youth confusion and fear. Fear plays a huge role in the life of the youth. And we're going to talk about what causes them confusion and what are they are afraid of or afraid for. The first element we need to talk about is the element of sexual education versus sexual responsibility. Most of us focus on drilling the moral values into our children, and that's appropriate. But for them, it is more of a challenge than it is to apply a rule. In other words, they need to understand what comes with sexual activity of sexual consequences and responsibilities. So their struggle between what the society pushes at them of values related to this issue and what the home tries to drill in them of values related to this subject. So between the two, our youth are confused and afraid. They are afraid to violate and they are afraid to miss opportunities. So they live this kind of imbalanced life between the home values and the social values. Okay. They think that sex is if you get into zina. We think that a girl who doesn't dress properly is presenting herself in a way that creates attraction. A boy who extends a look of lust to a girl is putting himself in jeopardy and her. So they don't see what we see in the way we see it. They think, I'm not doing anything wrong, right? Because they have not done what is really obviously wrong. They don't see what Islam is looking at, which is, as we mentioned before, Islam does not prohibit zina in the language of practice. It doesn't say don't commit zina. Islam says don't get near, right? It's a different way of prohibition, okay? So they don't see that distance. They see it as a separate issue. What happens when I look at someone? You always talk to me about this, but it does something. Something happens. You like what you look at and you keep looking at it. Then it becomes a problem. So sexual education as they are taught at home and sexual responsibility as it is taught at home and sexual freedom as it is taught in the society and sexual restriction as it's taught in their faith. Then social life vis-a-vis privacy. They were used when they were young to barge into the mom's room, their dad at any time and so on and so forth. When they become 10 or even younger, parents start to establish restrictions. The Quran has a saying on this. The Quran says parents have right to privacy at certain times of the day, which is before Fajr, when you nap in the noontime, or after Isha. Before or after any of these three spots in the day, children have the right to be given access to their parents. So children need to be taught those issues at young age, not when they become grown-up adults. Also, You see, respecting adults versus becoming independent. This is a struggle for youth. The only way youth grow up into adulthood is when they feel they can do what adults do. So what happens? I'm leaving and I didn't tell my mom that where I'm going, when I'm coming, what I'm doing. Well, like dad does. So I want to be like him. Or like mom does. I want to be like her. So what that I came after Isha? So what that I came 11 o'clock? All my friends come late. So the issue of respecting adult as it is translated in reality is not something they figure on their own. They think that whenever adults require respect of the parameters, respect of the rules of the house, they think that this is restrictions that are not necessary at all. So they start to challenge it. And they struggle between, whenever do I become independent? What is it? Is it because dad is spending some money on me? No, I don't want him to spend. I can go and work. So their thinking is different from ours, and it's going to cause some confusion and some struggle between the two sides. They are also confused between dialogue and argument. When a parent tells his or her son or daughter, don't argue with me, they do not receive it well because they think that they are only discussing their point of view. So they want to get their way, or else it is the father or the mother who are arguing, wanting to make a big deal out of it. Anytime I ask for something, you make it a big deal, unnecessarily. So they think you are wrong and they are right. So this also enriches their feeling of confusion. What is a dialogue and what's an argument? Dialogue when there is a calm, rational, mutual discussion between somebody and somebody else. That's dialogue. Dialogue is when people listen and answer to what is being said, not something else. Most of us adults even do not have a dialogue. We mostly have arguments, and we mostly talk past each other, meaning that you raise an issue. You said, last month you spent the whole thing on your friends. And instead of me saying, you are right, I need to control how I spend my money, I say, oh, you also invited your friends throughout the month or last week, and why are my friends bad? So we turn it into something that it is not. So here's how it goes. In a dialogue, you raise an issue. The other side should address your concern, not bring their concern as an answer to your concern. This is what brings an argument. But a dialogue is, you raise an issue, I talk to the point of concern to you. That becomes exchange that is appropriate and legitimate to have. They are also confused between following rules, which would mean they cannot have expensive adventures. So on Friday night, they do not appreciate that you tell them, don't get your friends in the car on Friday night, because they don't know what you want or what you don't want. They think this is restriction. But we know what happens Friday night when all of the youth take their cars and run to places like Georgetown or other places to have fun, right? They don't know what the risk involved is. So they just want to leave you news that that's where I'm going, and you just accept it. So they want to have their own rules instead of your own rules. They want to have their own freedom instead of anything else. And yes, they want to have adventures in which they learn at your expense. They are also confused between establishing their own freedom to choose and decide and behave, and observing the limits set by parents. So parents need to explain to them that as much as the exercise of responsibility will equal as much as they ask of responsibility, of freedom. So freedom and responsibility, they have to be balanced. That show me more responsible behavior, I give you more freedom. Show me how you used your previous freedoms that you got, and what do you want now, and how you plan to use it. So if they exhibit responsible behavior, you are likely to give them, I hope, more freedom. So it is not that because I'm a youth, I present all my list of wishes, and you, the parent, because you have some resources, you must oblige and give me all what I want. Because if you keep giving without receiving more responsible behavior, you are nurturing child's behavior. You are nurturing irresponsible behavior. So it has to be a balance between the two. Before you give your son or daughter the key to their cars, you have to ride with them several times to make sure that their driving style is within your expectations, within what is safe, so that you don't have to pay thousands of dollars to repair the car, or worse yet, to go into medical bills and all of that. So their freedom have to be met with your limits, and the limits are the balance between freedom and responsible behavior. They are also confused between Islamic values and personal desire. They want to do what they want to do, irrespective of anything. Why? Because mostly our youth do not have the basic information about what Islam says about certain things. So their choices are based on their basic, very superficial knowledge. You said, I have to pray, I will pray, and that's it. What else do you want? As if prayer is the only thing they need to observe. But choosing what kind of friends, what kind of meeting, what behavior goes on in a meeting, what places do you go to together, how do you keep yourself safe, that does not cross their minds. So they need to be taught from early age as to what choice of friends is acceptable and why, what kind of people should constitute my best friends, who should be closer to me than others and why. Those things do not leave them to fall into those mistakes and then, just collect the ashes after. So they are confused between what should I follow of Islamic values and where those values come from, and what I want to do. And mind you that the society is not presenting values. The society is presenting counter values. So the society is saying, if you feel like it, do it. If you don't hurt somebody else, you can try it. So they try drugs because it hurts them. They try smoking because it only hurts them. So the society is not really giving them or teaching them values they should live by. It's teaching them how much of freedom they can grab. And that's it. No responsibility and no consequences. They are also confused between change, both physical, mental, and educational, and stability, especially if there is trouble in the family, if there are fights in the family, if there are discord in the family. Youth would be the worst hurt group. While we think that young children are hurt the most when there is discord in the family or divorce or anything like this, it is the youth who are hurt the most. Because the youth are in between. They are not fully oblivious to life and what's going on like young children, and they are not fully mature to process what is going on like adults. So they fall in the crack of what we do with each other as spouses in front of them in particular. Many parents, when there is discord in the family, they end up trying to draft the youth as their witnesses. And this is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake to get the youth as my witness, your witness, here's the judge, and let us sit with them. This is not appropriate. You are charging them to behave and act like not only adults, but as wise, mature adults. And that's not a role they would love to play. It just hurts their sense of stability in the family and their sense of security in their life. They are also confused between peer pressure, how much should I comply and conform to what my friends expect of me, and how much should I live by of the values I am grown up with. So they end up living double life. Life with my friends, in which my family would know nothing, and we have this silence code within the youth groups that, of course, you're not going to tell your dad, right? Of course, my dad, if he asks you, you tell him that we were here, not there. So, because youth feel very weak and vulnerable and distraught when they are caught doing something against their values. They are not just embarrassed, they are hurt because their violation of rules they had committed to before shakes their self-esteem and shakes their self-confidence. So try to catch them doing something good and push it forward, and try to overlook what you could of their shortcoming and move forward. Still, they are also still confused and afraid because of their young child's understanding or perception of adult infallibility. When I was young, I looked at my parents as infallible. They don't do wrong, they don't speak wrong, they see everything right. I grew up with that image, and when I reach my own adulthood, when I reach my youth years, I start to see things differently. After all, they are not angels. They are just people like me. They are just a little bit older than I am. And as such, the unconditional trust I used to have in my parents starts to get shaken. And parents become offended when their youth catch them doing something wrong, especially when they say, you also did this, right? And it becomes kind of like a head-to-head challenge. But youth are really and legitimately perplexed with this kind of thing. We should admit to our youth that we are learning in them how to even be parents. We have not graduated from parenting school, right? And we are also as much human as they are, and all humans can and make mistakes, right? And you should not follow me, nor should I propose myself as your role model. Our role model is the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his wives, his daughters. So when we level with them and humble ourselves to the reality, then they have more respect and more appreciation, and they are more willing to listen to us than if we play that we are infallible, we are angels. I want you to grow up like your dad. You look what your dad is doing. Don't do that. Don't do this, because his dad is going to make mistakes. His mom, her mom is going to make mistake as well. So we need to set the real model, not the actual reality model. So they are also confused between the issue of education and certification. Education is to expand your scale of knowledge and your depth of knowledge. You keep accumulating knowledge. Then certification is when you seek to be certified in a certain field. Many of the youth, especially when they move from middle school to high school and they start to think about choosing a field in which they specialize. I don't like math, but you have to take math. It's a school system. I don't like geography or history, but you have to take it. It's a requirement, right? So they need you to help them with their teachers to bridge the gap of why do we need those extra pieces of information in our life so that we can deal with fields that are not exactly our specialty. So they don't get it on their own. So they believe that this has nothing, I want to be a physician, so why do I have to study geography or history or any of that? It's boring. It's boring. I'm not going to be an English teacher. Why do I have to take 3-4 levels of English courses in the college? Challenging adults versus making my space. They believe if I do not push back the adults from their very overwhelming position of power and authority, I will never get my own power and my own space and my own authority. And they are right in that struggle. They are right. We must give them some of our space. It used to be when they were young, under 10 and below, that the space they need is physically and mentally small. So anything could satisfy them. But now that they are becoming, wanting to be more adults, and we want them to be more adults than children, they need that space. They need to make some mistakes. They need to be given opportunities to make mistakes and to be forgiven, to learn how to forgive and how to give opportunities and how to accept apologies and how to deal with life. So that's very essential part of their growth. So if I don't get my space peacefully, I'm gonna fight and challenge my parents to get it. Because without my space, I will never feel I am gonna be secure as an adult. So this is how they see their growth. Also, they look at the two issues, their desire for control. They want to control. It's like few parents, you want to secure that your child is going to succeed in school, that he's going to do well in school, that he's not going to go smoking, that he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that. So this desire for your control over their behavior does not run away from them. It's always with them. They also want to have their own control over their own choices. And sometimes they want to have and wish to have control over your own choices. Why? Because they ultimately are tied to you. You have one car for the whole family, and where you want to go may not necessarily be where they want to go at the time. So there will be friction. There will be time when one of you has to give up for the other, when the resources are limited. He is inviting his friends at home, and you told him before, if you want your friends, bring them home. I want to see them. So he makes an appointment with his friends to come and visit and maybe even take dinner, and you have invited your own friends. You didn't synchronize. They want to have a fight because you're telling me this, and when I invite them, you don't welcome them. So their desire for control is a step towards their desire for full independence. They want to learn through their own mistakes. Also, between proving oneself and accepting responsibility for personal failure. They want to learn life by trial and error, but they don't want to be seen as failures. And failure is a big deal of their fears. It's a huge source of their fear in their life. So those are some of the basic issues that youth struggle with on a personal level. And by the way, they do not sit down and make a list and say, Mommy or Daddy, I want to discuss this with you. They are living in this kind of cycle that goes in their head all the time, and they are just puzzled, and they don't want to be bothered with your opinion and your judgment and your values and your setting the limits. They want to take life on their own. I want you to pay attention to this list, and this is the last one in this series on this screen. What do adults want versus what do youth want or need? Adults want total control because when they had total control over the life of their children, they were okay, because they calculate the risk and the benefit and they make a decision and the children oblige, right? Whether it is school choice or subject they register in school, it's almost everything is done for them. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. What do youth need? They need freedom. So between your desire for controlling them and their desire for freedom, there will be a struggle. So how much freedom do I give them, and how much I give away of my own control over their life? Because this is their only space of freedom. When I give them away part of my control of their decisions, they start becoming and feeling like adults. We parents want total authority. We want to control where our youth go, how they spend their time, and so on and so forth. Some people only use authority to get them in the expected behavior area, and some others are wise enough to exchange ideas with their youth and level with them to convince them, why do you take that position? Why do you think that this friend that they chose, that they know for years before, is not turning out to be the best friend that he should have? So total authority versus independence is where the struggle is. Absolute obedience and commitment, and youth needing convincing reason, because their listening to your reasoning is their way to learn how to become adults. Adults in their thought, and adults in their behavior, and adults in their choices. So these two have to mesh together. You have to be willing to discuss rationally and listen to your question. When our youth come and ask us and say, and why? And we do like them and say because, and not complete the sentence, we are entrenching them in ignoring our reasoning. Why? Because we are not actually offering them any reason. But if you say because this and this and this, then they learn from your model as to how to conduct a discussion. But with the lack of discussion, when you ask any child or any youth, why do you want this? Because. And because becomes a full statement or even a paragraph in their head, as if you have to figure out the rest and get it on your own. Don't use their way, because it hurts you, it hurts them in the same fashion. Adults want ensured results. I just want to make sure that you don't do this. We're asking for insurance and assurance. What do they need? They need adventure. I'm just go to the park, I want to spend a couple of nights and I'll come back. What are you going to do? You know, this is the first time that your son wants to go with friends to camp in a park or somewhere on their own, no family, no adults, and you're afraid. Some parents freak out of this. Well, there will be risks with our life. So the way to make a judgment as to whether to approve a new activity that you have not seen them in that context before is to measure what you don't know against what you already know. So if you look at their previous behavior in other situations and you see them making good choices, they have good judgments, and they are careful as to how much risk they take with their physical activity, then you can feel a bit safe to have them venture into something new. But if, for example, you know that your child doesn't swim, he never learned how to swim, and they are going to camp next to a lake, you have the reason to be concerned, and you have to discuss it with them. We'll just go canoeing. I'm not going to swim, but what about if the canoe flipped? You have to learn how to swim. So there are things where your concerns are legitimate, and there are things in which you could use your previous judgment of their previous choices. And if it is legitimate, you let them go. Total discipline and space for self and personal judgment. This is something that we struggle a lot with our youth. We want them to do everything by the book as if they were machines sometimes, and we ignore their need for space and self-development and self-growth. We need to balance between the two, and we need to be open about those issues. And I think those issues will take much of our discussion tonight. Total accountability versus some tolerance. When our children do something wrong, especially youth, we do not have a discussion with them. We hold an interrogation. And the difference is, a discussion is asking inquisitive questions, open-ended questions. But an interrogation is when you ask yes or no questions. Did you not do this? Did he not do this? Didn't this happen? Wasn't it 7 o'clock? What? All of those yes-no questions are intended to corner the person you're asking. They are not meant to have a dialogue. So this is total accountability versus some tolerance for them so that they can feel, do you know what? I tried this, mom, last night. I didn't tell you because I know you were not going to accept it. But today I'm telling you that's what happened last night. You need to give them that space so that they feel secure to open up to you, even if it were after the fact. We need, as parents, immediate full compliance with our expectations. I told you this before, I don't want to repeat it. No, you will need to repeat it. And you will need to accept to repeat your instructions because you're not dealing with a computer. You're not dealing with a machine. And what do they need? They need time to grow and mature. And that means I cannot get 100% control of my young men and women at home. I think we do have some time for Aisha to entertain some questions. And this will end the parental series. So we can take questions on this section or on previous sections. But then I will want your suggestions of what do you want next of topics that you want us to address.
There's a hadith I want to ask you about. It's about not when to not talk to people, because I know there's a few different hadiths. You know, one says you can't boycott your brother for more than 3 days, right? Give him a silent treatment, not talk to him. And then there's this hadith, you know, when somebody's being foolish.
What?
When somebody is being foolish, you're allowed to give them the silent treatment. Let me see. I know I'm speaking in modern English. Here's the the Imam Shafi. When the foolish one speaks, do not reply to him, for better than a response to him is silence.
Yes.
Okay? And if you speak to him, you have aided him.
Mm.
And if you left him with no reply, in extreme sadness he dies. Can you expound on that and like what I call giving somebody the silent treatment versus dealing with them normally?
I believe that Imam Shafi, I studied Shafi'i, so I'm familiar with his poetry and his very wise advices on life issues in general. Here he is talking about wasting your time talking to somebody who doesn't value what you're saying or what you want to say. Yes. He doesn't value what you're coming with of value or wisdom or knowledge. So when he talks foolishness, he's saying don't respond to him, which means don't respond in kind. And if you try to respond in a different way, and you know that he's too foolish to make a U-turn, he's saying don't waste your breath.
Ignore him?
Yeah, just
Walk away, ignore him?
Ignore him. You don't have to walk away. You know, sometimes you receive questions that are quite intrusive because some people are more curious than normal, right? So how do you deal with this? Somebody's asking about your personal life, things that he or she shouldn't ask. Just smile and keep silent because it sends a clear message. And if the person is foolish enough to try to dig even deeper, then just back up or back off and move, because when you talk to them, you only nurture their curiosity into more stuff.
They could be asking you ignorant things too, and maybe you want to ignore that.
If the person is ignorant, the treatment is to teach, because they are asking for knowledge. But if the person is acting ignorantly, then it's different.
They try to bother you? Or
They are trying to play with your mind. For example, if somebody asks you, I heard that so-and-so was visiting you last night. That's intrusive. that person visited me at home, right?
That's when you say it's none of your business.
So what you may want. Oh, so you did hear that? Yes. Okay. So did he or she tell you that they were here? Yes. Okay. Further than that, don't discuss what happened, because they may just be snooping.
Your business?
Huh?
You can't tell them point blank, that's none of your business. that
You can say it is none of your business without saying it's none of your business.
Okay.
Yes,
I guess it's
because
rude.
being subtle is very critical for our social interaction. Subtlety is good.
Diplomatic.
Yes, yes. Let him know or let her know that you're not interested in displaying your private communication with somebody. Yes.
If they're your relatives and they keep asking you the same question, so you cannot avoid that. Like, you cannot just smile and you cannot just.
No, you will smile for 3 times, but after that you will frown.
But then the relationship will be in, they will not be happy with you. And
Of course they will not, but if
they're your relatives, so you cannot make them upset with you.
but I am not making them upset with me. They want to make me subject to their excessive curiosity about my personal life. So if you have a choice between exposing your private life to somebody who doesn't have any interest in your life and between protecting your privacy, what do you have? What do you want to sacrifice? His curiosity or your interest in your private life? I know that in-laws are quite difficult with that, right? Why did you tell my brother this and this? Well, it's because he's my husband. I didn't speak to him as your brother, I spoke to him as my husband.
Because they don't consider that as a private life. They consider that they have right to know.
It's family.
But then it's up to you. If you agree to their desire, then tell them what they want to know. But if you disagree and you think it's your private life, you need to protect it. Otherwise, you are giving power to people to interfere in your life. When I know how you talk to my brother, and I know it from you, then I will challenge you. And why did you say this? My brother was very upset. Do you want me to be your judge? You have to protect your private life.
And if a non-Muslim asks you something about your religion, that it doesn't make any sense, why people are doing this, and I don't have enough knowledge to, answer that.
Easy. Tell him or her, I did not study that subject very deeply, but I can go back, study, and come back to you with the answer. So very.
And they're saying that, so you're following the belief?
You're following without knowledge?
Blindly?
Yes. Yeah. Tell them I trust my teachers, but I don't memorize all of their knowledge. Yes.
Okay, going back to the youth.
Yes.
When they are young, as parents, we tell them and then they get out of line or, they act up and, there's a time out. So when they are young adults and you reason with them, you talk to them and you tell them, but then they continue to be out of line.
Out of line is an expression that they are using inappropriate language.
Okay, not inappropriate.
Yeah, out of line, huh?
Let me be, out of line as far as the rules, they are not.
They are in violation of your rules.
No, not that name.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to clarify.
Correct.
Yeah.
So not respecting the rules, you give them, time to grow into, being their own selves and learning from mistakes. But then, at what age or at what stage you just step in and say, okay, time out.
When they are exposing themselves or others to something dangerous. And the reason that this is my baseline is because If there's nothing dangerous to themselves or others, then it means that the issue is something they will try out and will discover on their own, and that's appropriate.
Okay. But when you say danger, would falling out of the religion could be considered as a dangerous thing?
Of course,
Okay.
of course, yeah. You have to appreciate the risk in question and the freedom they want and the reasoning behind what they are doing. And normally, really, I would like for parents, when you have a heated discussion or difference between you and your kid, use someone as a good reference that both of you would agree to. And let them help you sort your options out.
I have a
Yes.
follow-up.
Yes.
So nowadays, because of this, smartphones and texting, and a lot of youth who drive, they drive and they text while they're driving, and that's very dangerous.
Right.
That can get them in danger, they can endanger other people's life,
Of
and
course.
they can end up in jail too because
course.
they're texting.
Yeah.
So what would you advise to do to make them stop, to make, in general, all the youth in general, to make them stop, to make them think what could be involved? May Allah protect us. And if they do not follow, take the car away?
Sometimes we use our assumptions as facts, and sometimes our assumptions are actually facts. So we need to separate between the two, when it's only an assumption and when it is a fact. So if you go to your son or daughter and tell them, listen, were you texting while driving? And they agree, that makes it a fact. If they say, no, I didn't, then the issue is not whether they are texting or not, the issue is whether they are lying or not. And if you cannot assert that element, then don't treat them as liars. Presume their innocence and, oh, I forgot. We still have a long session on the subject, and that's dealing with our youth. So inshallah, next time we'll deal with issues like the ones you're raising, inshallah. So assuming that they are telling the truth is better than assuming they are not telling the truth. And whatever truth they present you, if you know in your heart of hearts that they do not, kind of like play around with truth, or do not mince it or gloss it over, then take what they say as truthful and deal with it from there. Okay? In either case, you will have to have a means to discuss and see from their perspective how they see things, how they see the risk. Yes.
So here's a little bit more of a comment. When I'm dealing with the youth, a lot of times in their minds they're just like, sister, man, everything is haram, everything around me is haram. and I try to explain to them like everything is halal except there's little part that's haram, but it's because everything around them, everybody's telling them that's haram, that's haram, that's haram. So the way I'm dealing with it is when I see them doing small things that might be a little haram but not like major, I kind of let them go a little bit, tolerate that a little bit, because I know that they're not praying or they're not wearing hijab, which is like something much, much, much bigger, or they still have to, we're still instilling the love of Allah in their hearts. But I know, I look at it sometimes and I think, if I was a parent, would I still be that tolerant with my own child,
As I mentioned, a parent's tolerance should always be measured against the risks involved. If it is really risky and it's a serious issue, then your tolerance level will shrink. But if it is a minor issue that you were talking about, and you could let them, handle it at the meantime, you're working on more important issues, then your level of tolerance and space for tolerance will be larger than when it is risky and when it is serious.
I mean, it's not risky see in the sense that it's dangerous, but it'll be smaller haram stuff, like minor. Like, for example, like kids their age, of course, girls, they're going to be caring about makeup, they're going to be caring with their nails and doing their nails and, you know, can I do my eyebrows? You know, like all these things that don't compare to prayer. They're not praying 5 times a day, you know?
But they underline other big issues, because they may underline an issue that you as a parent would consider serious, which is, for example, peer pressure. So if I see my daughter, for example, caving into peer pressure, and I think it's minor, it's a small thing, it's light lipstick. Okay, it's not going to make a big difference. It's not even stark or, kind of like very bright. No, it's just very light stuff. But the underpinning issue is big issue, which is I am doing what my friends expect me to do. That's a big issue. So you need to combine between judging the act and the underlying issue behind the act.
But you also have to break them away from society and what society is trying to pressure them to do, to be the Barbie girl
Yeah.
versus what we expect of women in Islam.
I think because we use harsh terminologies, I'm a strict parent, for example, or I cannot allow my son or daughter to do this. And she's not actually doing it, but she is heading in a path that may end up leading her to do what I am concerned about. Then I need to reason and rationalize with my daughter as to where this is heading. For example, a group of boys and girls standing in the recess, and they are talking just whatever they are talking about, whether they are just making jokes about the teacher or making fun of one student who did something. They are just talking. What is the context? What is going on is something. So when your daughter comes and tells you, tonight in the recess, this and this happened, and then we went and we discussed, and this girl this says, and this girl said this, you need to pick what is behind the lines they are using. You need to pick where are their values. Do they recognize what is ghaiba, what is namima, what is bad, in terms of verbal and oral responsibility for what they are saying, what they are hearing. So those are issues that you need to bring to their attention. So if you don't use casual discussion opportunities and debriefing when they come home, you miss a huge part of their life. And at the same time, they come home, they go to the room, and they are on the phone discussing with each other to reinforce the values of their behavior. You remember what this is and what this is, and I told her this, and she told me this, and you told her this. All of those back discussions you are not privy to. So you are much better off as a parent to allow your children to talk to you openly and to consult with you, rather than to be reserved and dissociate themselves from you and do not benefit from your wisdom or your knowledge. Okay, any other question? So we have at least 1 or 2 more sessions with the parental training program, in which we will be talking exclusively about how to deal with our youth. We spoke about their environment, how it influences them. We talked about their nature as an age group and what concerns them and what makes them unhappy, and what makes them, for example, want to be reserved and alone. Many of us parents are very disappointed when we say, we're going to visit your aunt. It's 2 hours away and everybody's going. And I say, I don't want to come. The guy is 14 years old. I don't want to come. It's boring. No, we'll be crammed in the car for 2 hours. I don't want to do that. And the parents freak out. They don't need to freak out. But just make sure that you set for them an alternative program in which they are safe. Because being around adults anyway is very, very demeaning for the youth. And I mean this word. They feel caged. Adults are like prison guards, right? And some of them are on a hyper notice. So you invite the sheikh to your home and you tell him, sit down, listen to the sheikh. He doesn't want to have the sheikh all together. So, and you bring his uncle or her aunt, and your aunt wanted to talk to you. Listen to her. He doesn't want to see his aunt. So, any question?
Yeah, just for the following series, if we were to choose a topic, do you have like a set, maybe like 5 options we can choose from, or just to start thinking?
No, I want you to.
I know I was thinking, but maybe if you have some, maybe you can help us brainstorm as well.
Let me look up what I have, but think of things that interest you as an individual, as a parent, as a wife, whether it is related to family issues, youth, children. We can. I will suggest after we finish this whole thing, my suggestion would be to open up for brothers also to come, because they are part of this whole process, and we did our background stuff, and I believe we owe it to them to invite them so that we can have open question and answer.
What does everybody, can we ask what everybody thinks about that?
Excuse me?
Can we ask what everybody thinks about that?
Of course, you can ask, you can give them your email and they can forward suggestions. Yeah.